let them know that we are strong, that we can make demands, that we are not the people who left. It can't be like before.
We had an army, not a government. Who gives that guarantee? Our governing army. We're the enemy. They'll treat us all like guerrillas. They'll ask us why we left in the first place if we're innocent. They wouldn't guarantee us shite after laxatives.
It is extremely difficult for people who have been exiled from their homelands, who have become refugees, to return for a number of complicating factors. They might not be the same people who left. They might have moved on considerably. The country might not have. In Guatemala, it's both of those reasons. The country hasn't moved on as far as it perhaps might have done in 10 years of peace. Yet the people, many of whom fled prior to the signing of the peace accords, indeed they did, they may have been absent for 15, even 20 years, living in a foreign country. Many of them had children there, their children grew up there, they don't know the ways of the country that their parents left. And it's therefore, to them, it's not just a difficult and dangerous transition, but it's a transition to something that's completely unknown, although they've heard their parents' stories, their grandparents' stories, whoever went with them. And so the play tells the story of a group of such people, a kind of loosely knit family.
He has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and release to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God. Vengeance is mine, said the Lord. Justice will be the Lord's justice. If there is no justice in your life, there is not God, but the devil in your heart.
The difficulty with language and the way language has been used forms a subtext of the play, and it complicates the return of people, because if people are to be made welcome, then you must do it in somebody's own language. You cannot continue using an official language, which has been part of the problem. That's slowly changing in Guatemala, where many documents are being translated at the demand of the indigenous people, the Mayan people, into the most widely spoken of their own languages from Spanish. So you find many bilingual legal texts, many government texts and documents are now beginning to be translated, but there's still a huge imbalance of power. And I think that might be another kind of theme for the play that we're trying to point out.
We certainly don't say no to practical help.
And that's what I can give, Susanna. That's what I can give with the Lord's help.
Well, maybe the first thing you can do is listen to what people say. Listen to what happened. How can we move on? What you are looking at now is the past. It has not moved on. Though there is some hope now that we are back here.
It is a sort of documentary play. I've used a lot of other people's words in it, so it's not verbatim theatre, but I've interwoven other people's words, the words from a lot of sources, words clearly from the Bible, you'll get that from one of the characters, words from people who have returned, people who expressed a desire to return but perhaps haven't returned yet. So it's a kind of sort of semi-verbatim theatre as well as my own take on that.
I think maybe we need the world to listen. We don't know where some souls are.
What do you mean?
They disappeared, have never been buried. I don't remember the names of those people.
I suppose the one basic message for me that comes out of that play is that an imposed peace and an imposed solution is no peace and no solution. People must make their own peace, and peace is a treaty. There is no one-sided, there's no such thing as a unilateral peace or a unilateral treaty of any kind whatsoever. It has to be up to the people who were driven out, who were exiled, who were made refugees in the first instance, to be part of that peace process. And in order for that to happen, they must be allowed to do it in their very own way. Their voices must be heard. So inasmuch as there is a message of the play, it's listen. Stop the talking and listen. To listen is far more valuable than to speak.
Not enough recognition. We're still invisible. That man's forgiven. So he carries on the old ways of not seeing, not hearing. So no one else sees or hears.
I never made an inclusively signed production before. The company had a signed performance a few years ago. So we've kind of got elements of all three different forms. We've got some gesture that we use in particular ways at particular times. We've got mainly sign-supported English, actors more or less signing what they're saying, but not always. It doesn't always go in sync. It's not quite that easy. And then there are some BSL elements as well. I suppose it's like translating it into any language. You know, you've got to really be careful about your usages. But also sometimes there are options for making something more poetic in the signing that maybe only a deaf audience member will pick up on. But we've tried to have as many shades of colour through the signing as well as there are in the English to try and do a good representation.
Felice, it was me. I killed your sister. I left her for the dogs, but they made me. I was afraid for my life. Can you find it in your heart to forgive me?
I think it works really, really well, and I'm really happy with the way that it is beautifully integrated. And I think in terms of inclusive practice, then from Birds of Paradise's point of view, that's a really interesting thing. And from my point of view as the director there, it's really interesting to try and take inclusion to another step forward, to another level kind of thing, but to have good artistic reasons for doing that and to create an interesting artistic effect.